guys, you think we should have the ark? Well, sure, we should have the ark. That means we're going to win, right? He didn't consult the right leaders. He didn't consult the priests. And thereof the man died. Not only did they carry it on a cart with oxen, which it shouldn't have been carried that way, but think about it. It would be like if you walked up to a door, you saw the handle, you know that if you pull on the handle, the door opens, and you just decided, well, I'm just going to unscrew the hinges so I can get through this door. The handle's right there. But they did it the hard way. David is doing the same thing. You look at the ark, it's got the stays, it's got the rings. We won't pick it up. We'll put it on a cart. It makes no sense. But that's because David wasn't thinking in just the right way. He was only conceived of, I'm going to win. I'm going to make sure I'm going to win my battle. I've got to get this back home to Jerusalem as quick as I can. The military general said, let's do it, let's do it. And so the man Uzzah died. And we read at the end of the chapter that they decided to stop right there. Once the man died, they decided to take a break. Drop it off at Obed-Edom's house for 3 months and see what happens. And again, I won't read the passage in Samuel, but after 3 months, David got to thinking again, maybe we should get the ark back to Jerusalem, finish what we started. Samuel tells us that the reason why David wanted to finish his task was that the house of Obed-Edom began to be very successful. They began to be blessed and to be brought up and held up by God because the ark was in their home. And David again saw that blessing and that praise and wanted it for himself. So he said, well, we're going to finish the task. But he goes about it a little differently the second time. In 1 Chronicles chapter 15, David does it right. Chapter 15 verse 2, David said, no one ought to carry the ark of God but the Levites. For them hath the Lord chosen to carry the ark of God and to minister unto him forever. And if you read on through the chapter, he begins to assemble the Levites, and lo and behold, the first family of the Levites that he assembles is the proper family, the sons of Kohath, in verse 5. Continuing on in the chapter, verse 12. David said unto them, you are the chief of the fathers of the Levites. Sanctify yourselves, both you and your brethren, that you may bring up the ark of the Lord God of Israel unto the place that I have prepared for you. For because you did it not at the first, the Lord our God made a breach upon us, for that we sought him not after the due order. So the priests and the Levites sanctified themselves to bring up the ark of the Lord God of Israel. And the children of the Levites bore the ark of God upon their shoulders with the staves thereof. The staves that had been there the entire time, as Moses commanded according to the word of the Lord. What lesson can we take from that today? The lesson very plainly is this: that doing the right thing the wrong way results in death every time. There are many religious ways that are proponed today as a way to get to God. And many people follow those many different ways. But if we try to get to God the wrong way, it will be unsuccessful. Just as the man died in David's first attempt at transporting the ark, because he tried to do the right thing the wrong way. But he didn't make the mistake twice. He did it right. And you read on through Chronicles, you actually see most of chapter 16 is a psalm of praise or a psalm of gratitude that David wrote, thanking God for his faithfulness, thanking God for allowing him to bring the ark finally to its resting place in the city of the Most High, the city of peace, as Jerusalem means. Let's look, though, at what happened, and I'm kind of following this story for a purpose. I had a title for this exhortation, and it's The House That God Built. We really haven't talked anything about a house up to this point. We've really just been talking about the Ark of the Covenant being transported from one location to another. But I want to look at what David does with this ark once he finally gets it to Jerusalem. And it's important, and I think there's some spiritual lessons we can take from David's attitude and God's response to David after he finally gets the ark into the right place, or the right position. In 1 Chronicles chapter 17, David, in the first verse, begins to think to himself about how he lives as a king in a fancy home, well-built, expensive materials, so on and so forth. And he says, but the Ark of the Covenant remains under curtains. It says that David had built a little tent for the Ark in Jerusalem. So the Ark of the Covenant was kept in this tent at all times. And there was a priest with it at all times as well. And so God comes to Nathan the prophet and gives Nathan a prophecy. And he comes to David with the message. He says, in verse 4, go and tell David thy servant, thus saith the Lord, thou shalt not build me a house to dwell in. For I have not dwelt in a house since the day that I brought up Israel unto this day, but have gone from tent to tent, and from tabernacle to tabernacle. Wheresoever I have walked with all Israel, spoke I a word to any of the judges of Israel, whom I commanded to feed my people, saying, why have you not built me a house of cedars? Now therefore thus shalt thou say unto my servant David, thus saith the Lord of hosts, I took thee from the sheepcote, even from the following the sheep, that thou shouldest be ruler over my people Israel. I have been with thee whatsoever thou hast walked, and have cut off all thine enemies from before thee, and have made thee a name like the name of the great men that are in the earth. Also I will ordain a place for my people Israel, and will plant them, and they shall dwell in their place, and they shall be moved no more. Neither shall the children of wickedness waste them any more, as at the beginning. And since the time that I commanded judges to be over my people Israel, moreover I will subdue all thine enemies. Furthermore, I tell thee that the Lord will build you a house. This is a fantastic prophecy that God makes through the prophet Nathan. You see, David's intent, and we went over this a few minutes ago, from the very beginning, was a military intent. He consulted his generals, he consulted his captains, but he failed to consult the priests on the proper method of moving the most holy Ark of the Covenant. He made a mistake, and a man died for it. And then he got it right. He consulted the priests. He organized the proper family, the sons of Kohath. They got the ark into Jerusalem. And now David says, well, we might as well make a house for it. Let's make a house for this ark. And God tells him no. We're told in multiple other chapters, it's not explicitly lined out here, but Solomon tells us, as well as David later on in the book of Chronicles, that there was a reason why God didn't allow David to build that house that he so wanted to build. Remember what the reason was? It's because David was a man of war. It says David had shed a lot of blood and killed many people. He says, because you've not been at peace, I can't allow you to build my house. And I got to thinking, now why would God tell David that he couldn't build this house because he'd been a warrior, a man of battle? Didn't God command David to fight those battles? Didn't God cause David to win those battles time and time and time again? Why would God then turn around and use that as leverage, saying, well, since you've been an aggressive man and a warrior-like man, you can't build my house? Doesn't really make too much sense until you begin to factor in David's thought process back in 1 Chronicles 13. You see, it wasn't wrong for David to be a warrior. It was righteous and godly for David to be a warrior. But see, David, as we all tend to do, began to accumulate a one-track mind. He began to think only of war, only of conquer, and the prize and fame and spoils that come with victory. And God was reminding David that there's more to this life than fighting. There's more to this life than claiming the victory over your enemies. And I can only imagine that David could think back to when he had tried to bring the ark out the first time. He said, I should have asked the priests the first time. not just the military leaders. But see, God turns the tables on David. David was a righteous man, no doubt. And God was trying to tell him a little bit of additional information. Look at verse 10, 1 Chronicles 17. There's a little promise in there that we may gloss over sometimes. It may not catch us. See, David is asking God if he could build a house for God.